It's around 9:15 on a Tuesday morning, and I am just about awake. It's good to be back on a familiar site, though. Ah, yes, the Portaloos. No, in all seriousness, I'm back at Binchester, and it's quite quiet at this time of the morning. The offices are relatively quiet. Some of the diggers are just about starting to arrive on site, and a couple of clues are around, showing that there's some Roman archaeology going on. Last year, due to scheduling conflict, I wasn't able to come to Binchester, but this year is special. This year is definitely the final year that Durham University will be digging on the site, and so I simply had to come down and see what they've been up to in the past couple of years. As I enter the site, it's immediately obvious that things are different. A quick scan around shows that there's one new addition to the landscape, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But first of all, let's establish where we're standing. We're not too far from the Binchester Roman Museum, the open-air area of the older excavation, and around 2,000 years ago, this is approximately where the Roman fort was, on Deer Street, monitoring traffic going north and south to and from Hadrian's Wall. In recent years, Durham University have been conducting excavations on the site, here at Trench 1 and Trench 2. And at Trench 2 in particular, they found the remains of a bathhouse with freestanding walls to a height that garnered the site the reputation of being the Pompeii of the North. But hyperbole to one side, Dave Petts and the other archaeologists on the site have been making some incredible discoveries. These have been adding to our understanding of the texture of daily life in this part of Roman Britain, and naturally I'm eager to see what developments have occurred in the past couple of years. The first thing I notice is that Trench 1 has been backfilled and the grass has grown back rather nicely. You'd almost never know that the dig had been here, or indeed that I'd been digging somewhere just over there. Next, my eyes are drawn to the right and the scaffolding and sheeting. This was the site of Trench 2, where the Roman bathhouse was found, along with that wonderful stone head. This area is currently being consolidated, and in the near future will be visitable and viewable by the public. So Binchester is all change, and I'm feeling slightly lost. But, like Dorothy, I follow the yellow road until all of a sudden I see a spoil heap, a sure sign of archaeologists. Or giant moles. No, these are definitely archaeologists. Welcome to Binchester 2017.
Hi, welcome to Roman Binchester. We're here again, Durham University, for our field school. We have our lovely first year undergraduates learning the ropes in commercial archaeology. This year we are continuing our excavation on the cemetery in the vicus of the fort. So we're actually outside of the fort. The fort's going to be behind the camera, and we're in the cemetery. The rest of the cemetery we did last year is further over behind the spoil heap to my left. And this year we have a bit more definition of what's going on with the cemetery. We have a big boundary ditch which the students have been putting slots through to try and understand the phasing of the cemetery, and that comes from the southeast section of the site, running towards the camera and then making a turn and going out into the wild beyond. We're not quite sure where that's going to go to yet, and within that boundary we have a number of burials, currently at least 20 this year. Last year we had around about 14. This year we have a lot of east-west burials, the same as last year, and they're all in that corner of the site, the northeast corner of the site. Because they're east-west burials, we think they're going to be late Roman. This was a Christian way of burying, we see going into the Anglo-Saxon period and beyond. Some of the burials actually seem to be inverted. They're still east-west, but with the heads to the west rather than to the east. Unfortunately, with this site, it's a very sandy natural. So because it's sand, it's acidic, and the bones don't tend to survive very well. We've had a few skulls coming out towards the southeast end, so less acidic in that corner of the site. But normally we're just getting the teeth, where the enamel survives but the bone and the dentine does not. We've had a few graves that have had hobnails, so we've had teeth at one end and hobnails at the other end, so we know that the boots were at one end and the head was at the other end. What we originally thought was a single phase cemetery, so short-lived cemetery, we're starting to think now is actually a multi-phase, because we're getting burials that are intercutting each other. It's hard to see the cuts themselves because we don't have the skeleton where you perhaps see truncation of the grave, but in some of the graves that you may see later, we've got very clear grave cuts, so we can see phasing of the burials themselves. This is our last year here at Binchester, so we're hoping to get as much as we can in terms of dating and phasing for this cemetery, and the students have been really enjoying it. We've had mixed weather. First week was apparently the worst weather we've had in 10 years out here, but they soldiered through and they're still here. Yesterday we baked it a little bit in the sun, but today it's a perfect day for archaeology.
I'm Katie and I've been digging this. This is we think a very wide grave, and I found 3 copper bangles here, 2 very flat ones and one that was 2 pieces of wire twisted around each other. And then we also found over here a complete pot about this big with one little handle. So yes, we excavated that very carefully and sort of took it out, and it was completely intact. That was pretty nice. But because the soil's very acidic, we haven't found any bones. We've only found a couple of pieces of teeth. This is the fill. So when it gets dug out and then a grave put in it and then filled back in, that's the fill soil. There's also these very dark, like black patches, which are manganese, but that's just natural. Yeah, we thought it might be 2 graves. We thought it might be an older one here and then another one cut on top of it, but having excavated, we think it's just a very big grave.
So what we have here, I mentioned earlier, we have a very nice example of a Roman kist burial, which was originally lined with 2 courses of stones around the edge of the cut, and you can see the base of the grave is still lined with stones, and it was covered with broken flat flagstones before we obviously started excavating it. We have two lovely volunteers cleaning it up for a photograph before they lift these base stones. And we found that the internal course of these stones was made of very nicely worked flat stone, whereas the external course were a bit rougher. I'm not quite sure why that is. And when these are lifted, we're not quite sure if there's going to be an earlier burial underneath it. We're guessing we didn't get any bone from this. We're guessing it was the burial of someone quite important on site because they took so much time to line it with these nice stones. Unfortunately, like I said, we didn't get any bone, and I don't think there are any finds from this either. But it is just a really nice example of an east-west stone-lined Roman kist.
Now sadly at this point I had to leave. As you've seen in a previous video, later in the day I would be filming at Vindolanda, but of course, as is always the case, just when I depart, something interesting is found. This year the finds included more pottery, some wonderfully elegant beads, probably from a child's grave. This object, which on site apparently people were jokingly calling a dragon's egg, but is more likely actually to have been a carved pine cone from a nearby, now collapsed Roman mausoleum. And with this grave, on the final afternoon of the last day, excavations at Venovia, aka Binchester, were brought to a close. It has been an honour and a pleasure to see Binchester Roman Fort developing as an archaeological site over the past 5 years, and frankly seeing the surprises that it's yielded in that time has been really exciting. In some ways it is a shame to see this excavation come to an end, but in other ways it makes sense. They have gone from the world of the living to the world of the dead, and there are already exciting plans afoot for a new site next year. If you want to know more about the archaeology at Binchester from 2013 until now, check out the video playlist on the YouTube channel, link available in the video description below. And of course, check out the Binchester blog, Twitter, Facebook and other links which are also available in the video description below.